Cool. I guess, you know, I moved here from essentially Barcelona, and so was fortunate enough to live overseas for about 2 years prior to moving here. And, you know, the plan was, I have a film degree, and I always knew that, like, people really wouldn't have paid for the things that I wanted to do. I didn't know what a foundation was when I moved here. I didn't know that, like, actually people might possibly care. So I thought, well, I'm gonna have to join this kind of capitalist system, but I still want to do all these crazy things I want to do. And so Detroit seemed to be the perfect fit for me because, one, there's lower barriers of entry. Two, I was traveling and seeing all these incredible things. Like, so my modeling career went from, like, wonderful, you know, entry to actually even more wonderful because it was just different. You know, this was complacent to me. This was like 1-star hotels, night trains, and absolutely you know, fascinating. The people that were doing things out of need and desperation were far more creative, far more effective than the people that were up here that were frankly boring and complacent. So, and so I thought, like, well, Detroit, you know, I'm traveling all over the world, and all of a sudden, like, I'm hearing all this stuff coming out of Detroit, whether that's the electronic music scene, like people like Adult or Derek May, or whether that's like the hip hop scene that's going on, or you know, the garage scene. Like, I'm in record stores and Jack White is like blaring over the radio, and it's like, this is awesome. Where's this from? And everyone's like, Detroit, and this is the city that I grew up north of and was always fascinated with as, like, you know, up to 18 years old. But never really knew my place there, so I ended up moving back, saying, all right, well, this is affordable. I'm not afraid of poverty. I'm not afraid of, you know, moving to a city where I don't know anyone because I've done it many times, and so I kind of came here and followed this, like, book, this air guitar by Dave Hickey. And Peter Schlendahl is this art critic from New York that wrote about kind of, and I'm paraphrasing this badly, but it was essentially move to a city, drink in the bars, you know, meet like-minded people, do something and start a movement, and then essentially destroy it, is what I kind of took out of it. Maybe that was more of a Dave Hickey thing, but because I think it needs to start again. And so it was, yeah, I mean, that's kind of why I'm here, is like I was searching for all of that, and then at the same time these low barrier of entries like led me, because I was a janitor and a bar back and a drunk, and I needed a real job at some point, which I love those jobs, but they just didn't pay the bills. And so I joined the only other thing that I had experience with in this kind of like traditional capitalist system, which would be you know, the restaurant industry. I worked in it since I was 16 years old, and so I met some incredibly talented people and ended up opening up Soul's Barbecue with them. We got really lucky because they were really great, and we had a great staff, and everyone was passionate. The thing about, like, Detroit is it really brings the best out of people, I think. You know, I mean, these people were, you know, literally learning how to carry a tray the night before we opened, but, you know, they meant it. Like, they tried so hard that people were very forgiving and supportive. The first day that we opened up, you know, 200 people showed up, and they could have, you know, they burned us at the stake, but instead they were just like, all right, we get it, let's do it, take your time, we'll get there, and you'll get there. And you know, 5.5 years later, we're busy every day, and I've got a staff that's far more talented than I am, so I get to go out in the community and volunteer and do all the weird stuff. It's not necessarily making films like I thought it would be, or playing music like I thought it would be, but it's architecture, design, building, and we're just helping others. Like, I really dig the volunteering, and you know, it not only makes me feel good, but it you know, it pushes my mind to think about creativity. Like Dai, the place that we're working tonight, you know, this place is a coffee shop that's going to be world class, and it's a $50,000 loan. In most cities that can happen, but you got a guy who's opening a classic cocktail bar who has a motorcycle background and knows how to weld. Even though he's got to open his own business, he's over here welding and helping Dai get open. the bartender at Slows is over here pouring the epoxy countertops. I'm over here doing woodworking. So we all kind of bootstrap it, just like Slows got open. Our architect, Brian Hurtan, only charges $700 to do our architecturals. That's unheard of. All of our friends that had day jobs came in until about 2 in the morning after they got out of work and helped us get open. So it's been a cool process.
Well, why did you choose this location exactly, and how did the presence of Slows change the community around here?
Well, I mean, the location wasn't necessarily that. It wasn't like Corktown like stood out more than anywhere else in Detroit. It's just I happened to come down here for nightlife and culture, and so a lot of that was happening in. And now I know it's happening all over the city of Detroit. But back then, when I first experienced Detroit, it was very easy to go to Midtown, Eastern Market, Corktown, downtown, and those neighborhoods. And so I was looking for a loft and ended up finding one, and it eventually, just out of chance of volunteering to help somebody across the street build out their recording studio, I got plugged into a building that was only $40,000. So the price was right, essentially. And then when you look at this block before we started working on it, you had LJ's, who were really the true pioneers. Robert and Sue, they were here 10 years before we were, maybe 15, who knows, but like they were great, and it's great that they make our business better and we make their business better, like true neighbors. And then Chris Colte across the street has a recording studio. He's just the perfect neighbor that we share keys, we share cars, we share whatever it is. And so it really the neighborhood kind of ended up being, of course, it's a major thoroughfare in a city. It's close to all the expressways, so connectivity is great. And it also is on a public park with an incredible treasure, the Michigan Central Station. But, it really just kind of selected us more so. Because believe it or not, when you look around, you think land should be far more available than it actually is in Detroit, but it's not. You look around and you say, oh, this is for everybody. But it's a struggle to find a property that's affordable for folks. It takes years, and that's a shame. We need to actually move some of these buildings and properties, get them in the hand of Detroiters or passionate people that are ready to make a difference in the community.
So people start to move here in this area after you open Slows and other business came here?
Yeah, I mean, that's been the goal for us. I already tried to open a second business, and we always make a joke we opened up one of the most successful restaurants in Slows and definitely the least successful restaurant the most successful restaurant in Detroit and the least successful restaurant in Detroit. So we're not interested in owning the whole block or doing every space down here. We want neighbors, and if we can, ideally, each one of these buildings would be filled with people like us, where we live upstairs and we work downstairs, and then we take an active part in the community. We want to plant trees on our street. We want to make it a tree-lined street. We want to help with public transportation. We want to help with bike lanes. We want to help with complete streets. We want to help with the public park that's here. We want to help other small businesses get open. So if we all start, working together, I think our potential is limitless in Detroit. We have the infrastructure to be great. We are great. We're great in other ways. And so how do we engage the people of Detroit who are far more talented than anywhere else I've ever been? How do we re-engage them and say, all right, this is what you can do, this is what we can do, this is what the city can do together, versus you can't save Detroit. We don't need this whole mentality of come in and save Detroit. It doesn't work. Detroit can save itself. If people really want to help, ask a Detroiter what they want to do. Don't come in and tell them what they're going to do. So, I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah. How about food? I mean, what's the role of the urban garden, community gardens in Slows Kitchen and generally in this community?
So, urban ag is huge in Detroit. It's exciting. The possibility of growing the city's food inside of its own boundary is incredible here. Unlike any other city, we have the landmass left over to do it, and we have the need to do it as well. We're not importing the same kind of crap a lot of other people are importing. So we do have this, whatever they call a food desert, which we do have great grocery stores in Detroit, but we don't have enough of them. And so there is this void, and how do you fill that kind of vacuum? And it's for me, I think urban ag is huge. because it's something that the city already has strong roots and connection to, which is farming, and we have the space to accomplish it. And then this whole idea of localization is so strong. So I hope to connect better to it in my professional life, and I hope to continue to connect to it in my private, personal life, where I choose to give, because I love urban ag, and I love to. I love that my neighbors live in the same neighborhood essentially as me, but they farm on 2 acres. They live in a rural environment. They're completely happy, and they can ride their bike 5 minutes to the opera, to the baseball game, to the rock and roll show, to the hip hop show, whatever they're.
Cool.